Hi, good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining me as I am raising awareness about a very important presentation that happened in the UK Parliament today from Andrew Bridgen, an MP, where he was bringing the case of excess deaths. The question is, was he listened to? Now, for those who are interested, you'll realize that actually he tried to present this to Parliament on 20 occasions. They finally acceded to that request to look at excess deaths. But the question is, were parliamentarians interested? Was it of enough relevance to them for them to want to spend this Friday afternoon to listen to excess deaths conversation? Now, I'll be playing three small bits, so this will not be long. I have the link for the full presentation in the description below. I'll also have a link to an after his discussion, and I will highlight the rebuttal of the discussion so that you can see a few snippets of this UK Parliament session. So, before I start, I'd like to remind you all that yes, I will be doing a presentation within a few days' time on the cancer explosion. If you are interested in this information, please click on the link below where you will be able to register for free to join me on that webinar, and we can discuss from my perspective of autoimmunity why I think this is going to be such a big problem in the next few months. So let's get started with regards to the presentation from Andrew Bridgen. And I'll start it from the beginning, and I hope my audio works so that you can hear exactly what he is saying, and you'll be able to hear the rebuttal as well from this presentation. So let's listen to them go.
Andrew Bridgen. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We've experienced more excess deaths since July 2021 than the whole of 2020. Unlike the pandemic, however, these deaths are not disproportionately of the old. In other words, the excessive deaths are striking down people in the prime of life. But no one seems to care. I fear history will not judge this House kindly. Worse still, in a country supposedly committed to free and frank exchange of views, it appears that no one cares that no one cares. Well, I care, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I credit those members here in attendance today who also care. And I'd also like to thank the Honourable Member for Lincoln for his support, and I'm sorry that he couldn't attend today's debate. It's taken a lot of effort and more than 20 rejections to be allowed to raise this topic, but at last we're here to discuss the number of people dying. Nothing could be more serious. Numerous countries are currently gripped in a period of unexpected mortality, and no one wants to talk about it. It's quite normal for death numbers to fluctuate up and down by chance alone. But what we're seeing here is a pattern repeated across countries, and the rise has not let up. I'll give way to my honourable gentleman.
I'm very grateful, and can I commend him for the tenacious way he's battled on this particular issue. I certainly admire him for that. I just wondered where he found the media was in all of this, because of course during the COVID pandemic, every day the media, particularly the BBC, couldn't wait to tell us how many people had died in that particular day without any context of those figures whatsoever. But they seem to have gone strangely quiet over these excess deaths now.
I'd just like to pause it here a minute, because this here was another MP who had come and asked that very important question about why was the media so silent about what should be a huge story, what should be in the public's interest for them to try and find out. Additionally, it's worthwhile to reflect, and I'll pull back on this, to see the stage in terms of the parliament at the time, to see how many people were there. And you can see at this point here, when we bring it up, you can see this here is Andrew Bridgen. Let's make sure you can see my pointer. This is Andrew Bridgen here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and a few people in the gallery. That's all that was there for what should be one of the most important discussions with regards to looking at excess deaths across the UK. Now, you have to remember that in Australia, they refused to look at this. The Australian Senate chose not to look at it at all and actually to focus on nothing at all around excess deaths, even though their mortality was at one of the highest it had ever been in since World War II. So we have a habit of politicians ignoring this kind of information for whatever reason. I am not sure, because they are there in reference to their constituents. I think that part of the problem is that creature, the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody seems afraid to deal with the questions around the elephant in the room. I don't know if it's because of financial or political interests, but there seems to be a clear reason why this is not addressed. However, I will let you listen to the full presentation from Andrew Bridgen, but in terms of the rebuttal, I thought it was worthwhile to reflect on a few things that we have heard. So let's bring forward the rebuttal to what he has said.
Speaker, can I start by congratulating the Honourable Member for North West Leicestershire for securing this important debate. I do only have 5 minutes of the 30 minutes debate to respond, so I will try and cover all the points if I can. Can I start by acknowledging that he is correct? We have seen an increase in excess deaths in
Just to pause here and make it clear that that shouting that you hear in the background are people outside of Parliament who we're going to come to again in a short period of time to hear what they had to say.
In the last year. However, his analysis is something I will disagree with, because the causes that he refers to are simply do not bear to the statistics that we have. There have been a combination of factors contributing to the increase in excess deaths, including in the last year high flu prevalence, the ongoing challenges of COVID-19. We had the Strep A outbreak, and conditions such as heart disease, which he touched on, diabetes and cancer. Because we had virtually a lockdown of routine health services over a 2-year period, many of those are now coming forward with increased morbidity and mortality as.
I will pause you here because I keep on hearing this discussion about lockdown being a part of the problem with regards to excess deaths. I could accept that in 2021 and probably early 2022, because it would take about 6 to 12 months for a cancer that was missed to present and therefore cause disease. But in 2023, at the end of 2023, to blame a lockdown in 2020 for the cause of excess deaths, when we already had lots of deaths in the pandemic, and you would expect that your mortality rate should be way lower than the periods of time even before. So between, say, 2010 to 2019, your excess deaths should be lower because so many people died in the pandemic. But let's continue to listen to what she had to say.
As a result of that. And starting with winter flu, the number of positive tests last year peaked at 31.8%, the highest seen in the last 6 years. And interim analysis from the UK HSA indicated the number of deaths in England associated with flu was far higher than pre-pandemic levels. So excess deaths due to flu last winter is sadly part of the answer. And he touched on the independent body of the ONS. Well, their figures show that the leading cause of death in England is still dementia, which accounts for about 10% of all deaths. But they do also look at the cause of excess deaths. And if you look at the figures as of June this year, the top 3 causes of excess deaths are respiratory illnesses, dementia and ischemic heart disease, which is often caused by an increase in cholesterol, smoking, not having a blood pressure check. So there's a number of reasons, and they are often chronic conditions that people have had for years, decades.
I'm going to pause here because one of the people has highlighted this very important point. The rebuttal made no mention of higher levels of deaths among young, previously healthy people. Extremely important point when it comes to considering what is relevant in the context of excess deaths. It's not just the older cohort who are dying, but younger people with no clear explanation in numbers that we have not seen before. Let's continue to listen.
Decades, in fact, some people, and are not acute illnesses. Now, just to touch on some of the points that he has made in his points in the 3 minutes I have left to respond. Firstly, turning to the importance of vaccination, I think it's very easy to say that there's a prevalence of high rates of COVID vaccination in people who have died, and that is correct. When 93.6% of your population has had at least one dose of the vaccine, there will be a high rate of vaccination in excess deaths. That is different to causality. I completely agree with them. There's a high prevalence rate. That is not the same as saying that that is the cause.
So that's an important point. And I keep on hearing this over and over again, that just because there are excess deaths and they're associated with people who've been vaccinated, and that's the most of the population, it doesn't link causality. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that point. However, there is a definitive responsibility, or the burden of proof is not on an Andrew Bridgen to say that this is the cause. The burden of proof is to say that if you have done a new intervention, it's kind of like bringing in a new drug. You bring in a new drug, you notice that more people are dying. You can't specifically say it's the new drug that has caused it, but your responsibility is to ensure absolutely, categorically, that it is not a part of the problem. And so there is this expectation that suddenly data is going to appear and that will clearly link it. It doesn't work like that. We can see what happened with smoking. We see what happened historically with thalidomide. If you do not look, you will not find. Let's listen to what else she had to say.
Of those deaths. And the Office for National Statistics has looked that actually those who've been vaccinated generally had a lower all-cause mortality rate than the unvaccinated people since the booster introduction in 2021. And a recent study in Singapore actually found that when they looked at patients who recovered from COVID who were unvaccinated, they showed an increased risk of by 56% more to be at risk of cardiac complications a year later.
So this is an important point. And it is true that when you look at the statistics and you look at the ever vaccinated or even the boosted cohort, it's a very important point. Their excess mortality is running lower than the unvaccinated. Here's the problem, is that we don't know the mechanism, and two, it's trending to go beyond the unvaccinated in the future. We just don't know when. Additionally, those who had one dose of a vaccine or those who only had two beyond 6 months had a significantly higher mortality. And so you have to break down the numbers in order to make sense of it. And that's not clearly coming out in her rebuttal. But let's listen some more.
Compared to those who were vaccinated. So there is conflicting data on this, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with him, but I think we need to have a robust conversation on this and not to assume that one side necessarily has all the answers. Now, just to touch on a couple of points that he made around vaccine safety. Now, the regulator has been taking account of those who report adverse events, and I would encourage anyone who's had a side effect from any of the vaccines to use the yellow card system to report it to their GP, because when they have been reported, the MHRA has taken action. If you look in April 21, the MHRA reacted to rare cases of concurrent thrombosis and thrombocytopenia following the AZ vaccine, which resulted in adults under 30 not being offered that vaccine. And in May 21, that was increased to the adults under 40, and particularly to the mRNA vaccine in June 21, following reports of a link between COVID vaccines and myocarditis. The Commission on Human Medicines conducted an independent review, which found the incidence of this side effect was rare, but it was between 1 and 2 cases per 100,000. So when there are concerns, absolutely we must investigate those. There is no doubt about it. And for those that have experienced rare side effects from the vaccine, we had a debate earlier this afternoon about that. We do have the Vaccine Damage Payment Scheme, which offers a payment of 120,000 if that is one showed to be...
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm terribly sorry.
So that's the end of her rebuttal with regards to what she was able to say about the excess deaths. It highlights an important point. I have to give credit to the UK for bringing this forward, because this is the first country in the world that has allowed a debate at this level. If you are watching anywhere else in the world, it's very important for you to insist that your parliamentarians do thorough research and at least debate it within their parliament. So the final point that I'd want to do is I'd like to let you know that even though parliamentarians did not turn up in the context of supporting or being interested in that question about excess deaths, many people were outside Parliament to support Andrew Bridgen. Let's listen to what he had to say and see a quick look at the crowd that was outside from the Together movement. We are very happy that they were able to share this information with us.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming down here to support the debate today, and thank you for supporting me and the cause. No? Can you hear me? More? I just spoke for 25 minutes and nothing else. Look, it's been quite a week. Start of the week, get attacked from behind by a blunt instrument. But what an ending to this week. We have made history today. 9 months, more than 20 refused attempts to get a debate on excess deaths. The first debate on excess deaths in the UK Parliament. The first proper debate on excess deaths in the world. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, it won't be the last. We will get a 3-hour debate in the next few weeks now on excess deaths.
So there you have it, example of a politician who is standing up for his constituents to make sure that things that could be relevant to them are being dealt with. My final thought is this. The only reason that Parliament was not full of politicians was the fact that constituents did not challenge them enough for them to be concerned about their position, where they would then make sure that they were attending such a meeting for the benefit of their constituents. And that's where part of the problem lies. Enough people in the public are not concerned enough around this for politicians and industry to make the case. Until that changes, we're likely to continue to see excess deaths rise across the world. And by the time we do something about it, it's likely to be much too late. Have a great evening.